What's up, everyone? It's Dakota, and welcome back to another Pioneer video. And this week, we're going to be taking a look at probably one of the best and one of the safest options to be playing in the current Pioneer format as of February 6th, 2023. Of course, that is the Rakdos Midrange deck. Rakdos Midrange has been a top deck in the format for a while, and with no changes seemingly on the horizon, for the format in the terms of like bans and things like that, it looks like Rakdos Midrange is here to stay for another cycle of sets and things like that. So before we get too deep into it, of course, if you have not already subscribed to the channel, please do. It's an easy way to support my content. It's free, easy, takes 2 seconds, and makes me happy. Also, in the description of this video, there's two links. There's one to the Discord server that I run, just to go over, click the link, do all that stuff, join. Feel free to bring up like any magic topics and things like that. Just stuff to talk about. I enjoy doing those kinds of things. And the other one is to my Twitch channel, so when I go live on Twitch as well. Occasionally streaming, magic. Probably doing more video game stuff over there, just because that is one of my other hobbies that don't really get much time to between doing this and like actually working and stuff. So if any of that stuff interests you, go ahead, follow those links. Now, back to Rakdos Midrange. So, essentially, Rakdos Midrange, as I said in the intro, is one of the best decks currently playing the format for a few reasons. And it's kind of for the reasons why I personally like playing midrange decks and kind of decks like this. They kind of know when to be aggressive and they know when to be controlling, and they can play both roles. Maybe not better than necessarily like blue white control can play control, and like mono red, Atarka red, and mono white can be aggressive, but it kind of splits the difference and it hedges its bets a little bit. So a lot of the creatures that you see in here kind of pull double duty and do a lot of the things that mid-range decks wants. Blood Tithe Harvester being one of the prime examples of this. Not only is it 2 mana 3/2, uh, that obviously is aggressive just in stats alone. Like kind of like the controlling aspect of it is like you can just use it as like removal. You can trade this creature off for another one of your opponent's cards, and the blood token it leaves behind you can cash in. Maybe if you're flooding out on lands, you can pitch a land to draw a card, hopefully find some kind of action, or you just getting rid of a card that's not really relevant in the matchup. Like getting rid of like a fatal push or like a dreadbore against like the control deck to hopefully find maybe like a Shieldred or something like that. So Blood Tide Harvester being a very good card in that aspect that it gets to play both lines of the aggro and like control spectrum in kind of a sneaky way. I think people don't really generally see it as that. They usually see it as like a removal spell. They don't really see it as like an aggressive option. But it can definitely do that and also have the bonus of getting to turn some of your dead cards in certain matchups into hopefully actual good spells or even just hitting land drops and things like that. Next we have Croxa. Croxa is definitely to me leaning more on like the aggressive side. You just play this on like turn two, get into the graveyard, force your opponent to discard a card. If they're discarding lands, that's probably pretty good for you. If they're discarding a spell, that's pretty good because you essentially traded like half of your spell for like a full card from them, typically. So Croxa being good in that respect. Also just being a good late game threat. Your opponent's kind of like you've ran each other out of resources, and Croxa gives you something to do with your mana. 4 mana, getting rid of 5 cards from your graveyard. The cards in your graveyard not super relevant to you, so just getting to play this Croxa late game, more than likely going to hit your opponent for 3 damage, and if they do not draw an answer right away to the Croxa, then this thing is probably going to hit for at least 6 damage, and forcing your opponent to hold spells until they can actually deal with the Croxa. Bone Crusher Giant getting to play removal and also be like direct damage to the face, when you need it. On top of just being a 3 mana 4/3, again another aggressive body for a pretty cheap cost, and punishing your opponent for actually being able to handle it. They trade like one of their spells, you just get to deal direct damage to them, constantly putting pressure on their life total and forcing them to have answers for these threats because it's way worse for them if they don't have answers for them, and even when they do, it punishes them very slightly. Graveyard Trespasser, a way of attacking some of the graveyard-based decks in the format. Ward, the big thing on this just being to, if your opponent has a spell to try to kill it, they have to discard a card to actually get through the ward of Graveyard Trespasser, which 2-for-1ing your opponent, pretty good, especially if you tap out for this card on like turn 3. On top of that, again, just getting to eat at the graveyard, also putting pressure on your opponent's life total by attacking, being a 3-mana 3/3, flipping over to a 4/4 if it's nighttime, or I guess nightbound, not nighttime. um, and just getting to also eat more cards out of your opponent's graveyard, make them lose life, you're gaining life, and can create some racing situations that are heavily in your favor. You have Shielder of the Apocalypse, probably the biggest addition to the deck from, not the All Will Be One set, but like the previous set before that, Brothers War, or not even Brothers War, Dominaria United, excuse me, a few sets ago. Obviously, 4-mana 4/5, Death Touch, very hard to beat through. Also allows it to be very aggressive because Death Touch is the fact that, like, in the worst case, and even though you probably typically don't want to do this, you can attack, force your opponent to block with like their best creature that they have, and you just get to trade it off in a situation that's beneficial for you. Also, the fact that it just gets to sit, play defense, 5 toughness, a lot for some decks to deal with. Just the fact that it'll more than likely, if your opponent's attacking, Shielder is being able to block, kill whatever it's blocking, and then continue to stick around on the battlefield. And on top of that, like drawing cards, gaining you 2 life, essentially meaning that it's even harder for your opponents to race you just on a turn-by-turn basis as it just sits on the battlefield. And your opponent drawing a card, they lose 2 life. If they don't have an immediate answer for Shieldred, and they have to like draw 2, 3, 4 cards to find an answer, Shieldred did 8 damage to your opponent, or caused like 8 points of life to be lost from them, and gaining you 4 points of life, probably upwards of like 8 points of life, so it's just a huge life point swing for a 4-mana spell that really doesn't even have to do what a creature does, and really interacting with combat. It could just sit there and give you value all on its own just from that. Something like past that, like these are the ways that you're generally going to win the game. Your spells, kind of like enacting this control slash like aggressive game plan. Fatal Push, Dreadbore, Power Kill being the removal spells of choice for the deck. These are just like super efficient for the format for what they do. Very powerful. Dreadbore obviously getting to get rid of planeswalkers. Fatal Push just being 1 mana and dealing with a lot of the creatures that you want to be dealing with in the format as a whole. Power Kill just kind of getting to clean up. I don't think there's really any angel, demon, devil, or dragon creatures people are like super worried about that are like highly played in the format. Of course, there's probably going to be an obvious one that I miss, but the fact that this is 2 mana, not really taxing on like the mana the way like Dreadbore is. Instant speed, allowing you to interact, very, very good. Thoughtseize is getting to be a proactive way of attacking like some of the other combo decks, attacking even like some of the control decks to force through some of your other spells, and even like taking like key cards from like aggro decks and things like that. Uh, Down farther, you have Reckoner Bankbuster. This is a vehicle from the Kamigawa set that comes into play with 3 charge counters on it. You can pay 2 and remove a charge counter to draw a card. If there's no counters on it after you activate this, you create a treasure token and a 1/1 pilot that says this creature can crew vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. Essentially, being a 1/1, it can crew 3, it can crew the Bank Buster. This card is generally just going to be a way to get some kind of card advantage in the deck, on top of just eventually being a aggressive, like you get a body out of it that can crew the Bank Buster and start attacking your opponent as well. It's a way that just card that kind of sits on the battlefield and will generate you some advantage. Fable the Mirror Breaker, of course, like the breakout card from the same Kamigawa set, probably one of the best cards released from that set, and probably one of the best cards in Pioneer, and even like a very, very, very playable card in the modern format, and probably one of the better cards in the 4-color creativity decks that we see in that format that are not Archon and creativity. Everyone knows what it does. The fact that you kind of get to double up on some of these non-legendary creatures, like getting to copy like Graveyard Trespassers, Bone Crusher Giants, and Bloodtide Harvesters. That's something. That is really something, especially with like Harvester getting to create blood tokens, and then even like using the token because it'll have haste to sacrifice it and act as like a removal spell. Bone Crusher Giant just again being super aggressive, having 4 power. Graveyard Trespasser getting to continue to eat cards from your opponent's graveyard, again putting pressure on their life total. without even having to necessarily deal combat damage to the opponent, and obviously mess with their graveyard as well. Fable just does a lot for this deck, from the chapter abilities to the reflection of Kiki Jiki side. Just all around like a very good card, and probably one of the safest cards I would say, especially for like the price as well, to pick up for the format, as well as like getting into modern as well. Mana base, of course, pretty standard, I would say. You have one Urborg, kind of turn like your one mountain and some of your other red like lands into essentially dual lands. You have Sokensen, makes 1/1s. I'm assuming that this is just kind of like a better than just playing a mountain, obviously, because it can turn into tokens, allow you to be aggressive as well. You have Hive of the Eye Tyrant, again, to kind of eat cards from your opponent's graveyard. Also, just being a 3/3 with Menace makes it very hard for your opponents to kind of deal with it in like those top deck situations. You have Den of the Bugbear, which it's been a while since I've seen a Den of the Bugbear or the Hive of the Eye Tyrant. And the reason why I like to bring up that fact in specific is because with Den of the Bugbear, you can activate it multiple times. And when you activate it multiple times, you get to create essentially that many goblins. So if you pay 8 mana essentially into a Den of the Bugbear and attack with it, you make 2/1/1s tapped and attacking. So that's a pretty cool fact to know, and is something that can come up a lot of the time. Castle Lochthwain is a way to draw cards in this deck, draw extra cards, obviously in like the top deck situations and whatnot. Also in conjunction with like Shieldred, you can negate some of the life loss from it because you do lose life equal to the number of cards in hand. So if you draw up to like a second card, Shieldred will negate all that life, and then anything past that, you'll end up losing life. But just something to, I guess, keep in mind, because Castle Lochthwain does in fact draw a card, doesn't just put it into your hand. Sideboard, you have Duress, Pithing Needle, Rending Volley, Abrade, and more Reckoner Bankbusters, Extinction Event, and Ritual Set. A lot of these just to kind of shore up some of the other matchups. Again, like mid-range decks typically are not like the best aggro deck. They're not the best control deck. They kind of split the difference between both sets of strategies, and these are just ways to kind of tune in and really go full-on control deck or go full-on aggro deck in a lot of those ways. And that is the Rakdos mid-range deck for the Pioneer format. I've said it time and time again, this is probably one of the best and probably safest decks to be playing in the format currently. Definitely mid-range decks require a lot from the pilot in terms of format knowledge and really understanding a lot of the interactions and stuff and inner workings of the format. So if this is a deck that you choose to pick up, I highly recommend playing as many games with it as possible. I would recommend that for every deck, but especially decks that require a lot of format knowledge and a lot of just like playtesting and all the knowledge required to you know know a lot of the interactions and stuff. This is a deck that you can go very, very far with, just being a very smart player, knowing the ins and outs and things like that. So that's going to do it for me in this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please again consider subscribing to the channel, ring the notification bell so you know when I post more Pioneer videos, more modding videos, and things like that. Again, follow me on Twitch as well. That link is in the description of this video. And of course, even though I never say it, I do put the deck list in the description of the video. And it's kind of weird because I'm always like, I'm going to do it, and I never do it. Say la vie. So if you want to check out this deck or look at it, whatnot, their link is in the description of this video as well. So that's gonna do it for me in this video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you all in the next one.